And the topic this evening is the same as the topic the last time and the time before. And it is this topic of um, we experience the connection to essence when we meditate, when we go to the retreats, when we do our inquiries, these kind of things. We get into these very beautiful, supportive spaces, and then life happens, and it's not always that these spaces stay with us. And this is what we are looking at. How come, and what can we do to gradually extend the areas of life that are affected by the states that we know how to access. So yeah, so it is this thing. You might be, maybe now you just meditated, maybe you're in a very nice, relaxed space, very much at ease. And then maybe later tonight or tomorrow, you meet somebody you have an issue with, and the whole thing goes somewhere. Maybe not completely, but a bit. So this is what we are looking at. How can we maintain this inner connection when we go into action in life, and in particular when we go into certain kinds of action that are a little bit maybe not the easiest situations. So yes, and I want to just share the screen. So I have some slides like last time. Here we go, and I think like that. Boom, and we can go like this. Good. Here, so before we've been looking at a couple of different ways. We've been looking at this thing about the fourth one, so this essential embodiment of concepts, this idea that all the concepts that you use or all the words you use to think about different situations, it's possible to ground them in the states that you know, the different essential states that you know. And you can both take the positive concept, so that, for example, whenever you talk about grounding or supporting somebody or support for yourself, then the words grounding and support are sort of they call forth your experiences of the white essence. They call forth the experiences of this easeful and restful, settled experience. Whenever you talk about courage or strength or vitality, then these words can be so firmly grounded in this simple experience of the red essence, the flow of energy, the expansion of energy, and we can ground these concepts purely in that sensation. And of course, we can do the same with more with concepts that are often more seen as something negative. So maybe if you talk about boredom, that can be grounded in white essence. If you talk about restrictions, it can be grounded in white essence. And if you talk about frustration, it can be grounded in red, and so on. As you ground more and more of your concepts in the essential experiences, the way you think about and act in situations profoundly changed. So this is one thing that we looked at. Then last time we looked at this thing, we often talk about how essence is always present, but we're just too busy to notice it. And it's another way of letting the meditative states impact more and more our everyday life is also by just taking time to contemplate, what does that actually mean, and what does it mean for you that essence is always present. There's a lot of things that don't make sense anymore. All the things that we do that are primarily motivated by a wish to feel essence, well, it doesn't really make sense to engage too much in these activities. If essence is always here, then it seems more just as something like when you want to feel essence, you learn over time to make that simple shift so that you can notice it. It's like you gently touch into essence. And that's really all you need to do. And then there is the third one, which is the one I want to talk about today, which is just remembering the felt sense of essence before acting. And it's a kind of related to what we talked about last time. But yes, I'll say a little bit more about it. So in short, I can say that it is just that act, like whenever you feel the impulse to act, the urge to act, whether it is to, I don't know, eat a cookie uh, or write a harsh letter to somebody or mail to somebody you think needs to be told a certain truth, or whatever it is, like every time you feel an impulse arise in you to engage in a certain kind of action, it's interesting to notice, is this action in part motivated? Am I through this action reaching out for essence, some aspect of essence? And if I am, what am I reaching out for? And if I know what I'm reaching out for, what happens if I just shift my awareness to that essence and feel it? And then afterwards, I revisit the situation and say, now, do I still want to act in the same way, or do I want to do something differently? So this is the practice that we're going to play a little bit with tonight. And just to recap a little bit, because these ideas are so lovely to recap. Last time I talked about how a very nice way of thinking about our inner life is as if we consist of many personality parts, or here symbolized by a lot of little circles. So the big circle is your whole system, and all the little circles are the individual personality parts. I define personality parts as coherent systems of perceptions, beliefs, worldview, etc., in support of a particular action. And so I really like to think about personality parts almost like every single personality part has a signature action, so that you and it has different ideas about yourself, about other people, and different emotions, and all of this together both help you engage in that action and makes that action seem necessary to engage in. So this is why it's like a coherent but also a closed system somehow. And I had a couple of examples last time. So maybe there is one part that is the first one, the achiever, one part that is really the action that it is, its signature action is to go and achieve amazing things, something that is impressive. That's the action, and it has this belief that if you manage to achieve something and impress other people, you will feel like the star, you will feel radiant. It has another belief that if you don't manage to impress other people, you will feel empty, you will feel like a nobody. Um, and it might have certain emotions like a lot of enthusiasm, but also maybe a lot of fear, something like this. The other one I have called, the next one I've called the relaxer. I didn't have a good verb for that, but and it might be something very different. It might have this agenda of like, how quickly can I get rid of my chores and have free time to just do nice and pleasurable things. And again, it might have beliefs that the more I do that, the more smooth and ease and tranquility I'm going to feel. And if I'm bound up with lots of chores, I might feel very agitated and stressed and exhausted, and these kind of things. And it might also have the idea that the achiever in you is somehow a foreign entity that ruins its plan, and something that needs to be managed, maybe. And the achiever might have a similar view of the relaxer, right? The relaxer, it might see the part of you that wants to relax as something that's an obstacle to its agenda, and something that should be overcome. And so I hope, again, this makes sense, this idea that we have these little inner personality parts, and they are sort of organized around a specific action. And then there are a lot of worldviews and ideas and emotions and all of these things that support you pursuing that action, and also makes that action seem like really important to do. Good. So one thing that can be very interesting is to say, if if you have this, when you are identified with one of these personality parts, you have a certain method. In the first case, doing something impressive, in the second, doing something relaxing, and you have a belief that that is gonna get you something that you really want. And if it seems to work, now imagine that you're identified with the achiever, you do something very impressive, everybody says, wow, that was really impressive, and you do in that moment feel like a star, and you feel radiant and so on. So it seems like the whole thing works. And usually, if that is the case, then you're not going to ask any questions. You're just going to be happy that it worked. However, sometimes it doesn't seem to work. Maybe you're doing something that you think is really impressive, but nobody else thinks it's very impressive. Or maybe you try to do something very impressive, but you keep failing at it, or something like that. Then you might feel a lot of frustration. And as long as you're still identified with the personality part, then the kind of questions you will ask is, how do I make sure to overcome the obstacles so that I can pursue my agenda, so I can pursue my plan here? How can I, if you're doing something, you thought it was impressive, nobody else thinks it's impressive, then you might ask questions like, okay, so what other things can I pursue that might be even more impressive, so that I can get that response from other people that I'm seeking? And yeah, so you will ask, what can I do to pursue my agenda? So if it does work, you're not going to ask any questions. If it does not work, you're going to ask the kind of questions that about how can you optimize this thing that you are already doing. But of course, there's another possibility. There is also the possibility to say, to sort of pause and say, let me look at the bigger picture. What is it I am reaching for when I am doing this action? What is my ultimate goal? What is the ultimate thing that I think that I can get by doing this? Um, and often you won't know what the ultimate thing is. If you are identified with the achiever, you might just say, well, I want to do something that is big. Maybe you don't formulate it as I want to impress others. Maybe you say, I want to leave a legacy. I want my life to matter. I want to do something that I can be proud of. You might say those kind of things. So these are the kind of things that you want to, if you ask yourself, what is it that you are going for? Now it's very interesting to say, to take it a few steps further and say, okay, but if you know for certain that you are leaving a legacy, if you actually succeed with this agenda, if you really do something that everybody recognizes as this is a massive achievement, then what? What are you going to get through that? What is the ultimate goal? What is it that you're going to get by doing this, by leaving a legacy or something like this? Or with a relaxing person, it's like a relaxing personality part. What would happen if you manage to get rid of all chores for the rest of your life? Like what? So you kind of go with the agenda. You don't judge it. You don't question it. You just say, okay, let's play along and go with the agenda and take it all the way to the end, and then ask, how would you feel? And sometimes you have to ask that question a few times, and you have to translate it into a felt sense. Try that a couple of times. But what is so interesting is, and I've done this thousands of times with many different people, you always end up with essence. That's always the ultimate goal. Some aspect of essence is always the ultimate goal. There's a very nice book called Core Transformation. Yeah, Core Transformation is just called. And they were NLP people, coming from neurolinguistic programming or neurolinguistic psychology, and they they stumbled upon this almost by accident. But they just, I don't even remember why, but they started asking to people's positive intention behind their actions, and they thought, what happens if we just keep going? So every time, single time people answer, they say, well, what's the positive intention behind that? And they said that people would usually end up in one of 5 core states. And they talked about love and peace and uh, wholeness, I think was one of them. And it's very interesting to see how it's like if we are doing the essence work, you have a more refined categorization of the kind of states that people end up. So just let me see here. Oh, yeah, I just want to show this one. So the way we can explore what an individual personality part is reaching for is to keep saying this thing like, what if you had X, whatever it is that's reaching for, fully? Then what would that enable you to have that's even more important? This question, you can just repeat it. I've made like a staircase here. It's like maybe you have a personality parts that want compliments. And if you say, well, what if you had all the compliments in the world you could possibly wish for? Then maybe the part will come back and say, oh, then I would feel valued. Wonderful. Then you ask the question again, what if you are completely valued? What if you know for a fact that you are that you have value? Then the part might come back and say, oh, that would be wonderful. Then I would have this exquisite self-worth. And you can say, well, if you had all the self-worth in the world, if you were like filled to the brim of self-worth, what would that feel like? And they might come back and say something like, I would feel like a star, or something like this. Each of these, you can ask for the actual sense. These are kind of like almost coded messages. It's like feel valued or self-worth or like a star, which sounds nice, but it's kind of good to say, well, what does that actually feel like? Like what does this value that you say you are feeling now, what does it actually feel like? Or what does this self-worth is such an abstract word. It doesn't tell you about the physical felt sense. Different people might call different felt sense experiences self-worth. So you say, what does self-worth mean? Or what does it feel like a star? That sounds really yummy, but what for you, what does it actually feel like to feel like a star? And I think in this case, maybe all of these questions will lead to the same thing, like something like sensing an inner golden radiating light that shines outward or upward or something like that. And now you have come from the statement, I really want my partner to give me more compliments. I want my boss to give me more compliments. I want somebody else to give me more compliments. And you see, well, that is that expression, that desire for more compliments is really a desire for reaching something like a sense of being of this radiant golden light, inner light, which is an aspect of essence. So this is a very nice way of exploring what each individual personality part is reaching out for. So what I would invite you to do here is to say, well, if you think about a situation where you are trying to do something, but you're frustrated, you feel that you're not really succeeding in it, then you can say, okay, let me pause my frustration a bit, and instead of saying like, how can I get better at getting this thing that I really want to get, you can pause and you can say, okay, let me just for a moment imagine that I actually succeeded. And then you do this way of asking, so you try to get all the way to the felt sense. What is the felt sense that you are ultimately reaching out for? When you start getting a sense of what that is, you want to describe this felt sense in minute details. And as you are, the wonderful thing about describing a felt sense in minute details is you can't do that without feeling it. And as you are feeling it, the personality part that was reaching out for it is actually receiving it. You're getting it now, not in the way that the part thought you were going to get it, but simply by bringing your attention to it and describing it in details. And then you can notice, what does that do to you to sit with that connection to that felt sense that you were reaching out for? How does it affect your mind, your emotions, your body, and so on? And then in the end, you can revisit the situation that was the original situation, and say, well, okay, now that I've had a dose or a sense or connected with what I ultimately was reaching for, then how does the original situation feel like? And you might notice that that situation can feel in different ways. Sometimes you will notice that the charge has gone out of the situation, and you're not so, it's like you feel that personality part might say, I don't really know how this happened, but I can feel that I have the thing that I was after. So all good, I'm good. I don't need to do anything here. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you might discover new and important things about the situation. It's like when you're not so focused on, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. Um, New things about the situation might pop up that you can see then, and that's really interesting, can be very helpful or informative. Or sometimes when you think about the situation, you go like, no, I really want those compliments, and you're pulled right back into the world of this personality part. You feel the frustration again, and you might then notice more about um, the world of that personality part, and understand how come that even after you felt this very nice connectedness, you still go back into the frustration. What's going on here? And that can be very interesting, and help you to get to know this personality part even better. And as you can see, all of these outcomes are really valuable outcomes in terms of um, inquiry. So in a moment, we're going to have a little bit, I know some of you might have questions or something like that. We're going to, if you have any questions to clarify, we're going to do that. But just to say that tonight's inquiry is exactly this. And I'm going to tell you again when we get to the inquiry, but I'll invite you to just think about a situation where you felt frustrated, where you were trying to do something and your efforts were frustrated. And then ask yourself, or try to figure out, what is it that you are ultimately reaching for, and taking that exploration all the way to the felt sense essence. And then just see what happens as you let your awareness rest with or get saturated with this felt sense. Good. So